Yes.
Holy and beautiful the custom which brings us together in the presence of the Most High, wrote Unitarian minister Robert French Levins, who lived between the mid-19th and mid-20th century, as he called his congregations to worship, continuing with these words: to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened and to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of the ages, the cathedral music of history. 3 unseen guests attend: faith, hope, and love. Let all our hearts prepare them place as we light our chalice. Right. And it says faithify on the matchbox with no matches.
May this be a flame of faith, hope, and love, illuminating a dwelling place for these three powers within our hearts and minds.
morning. As some of you read in the perspective, I've learned a lot. We learn something new every day, and I've learned about our Advent calendar. The lighting of the Advent wreath is a Christian ritual of preparing for the birth of Jesus, and more traditionally, preparing for the birth of the Christ child. As I've learned over the last few days, Advent has different traditions attached to it in various Christian sects, as well as a lot of non-Christian sects. Many Protestant traditions, especially the Puritan one, from which the church's Unitarian roots evolved, would not have lit candles. For at least 2 or 3 centuries, the Puritan descendant churches continued to define themselves by not having any ritual that might look like the Roman Catholic or Anglican churches. So why might we, modern Universalist Unitarian Universalists, want to engage in such spiritual practice, especially when many of us identify as non-Christian and often as atheist or agnostic? Because we all have a hope for a better world to come. Peace on earth is not just a hope for those practicing one religion. Advent lasts through 4 Sundays prior to Christmas, hence 4 candles. Each candle, as we heard last week, has a meaning, a symbolism. The candle lit last Sunday is purple. The color signifies a time of prayer or deep reflection. It's called the prophecy candle, in remembrance of the prophets who called their people back to their principles and purposes, their ethics, back into relationship with an action from the power of love. Its symbolism is hope. This week, we light the second candle, also purple, and called the Bethlehem candle, a reminder of Joseph and Mary's long and arduous journey to Bethlehem. Its symbolism is faith. May the faith of this community deepen and burn brightly.
The hymn number 225, O Come, Emmanuel, is a hymn claiming some of its origins as long as 1200 years ago in the early Christian chants of this season of anticipation that used the refrain, O come, Emmanuel. The words in our hymnal were amended to modern Unitarian Universalism in the 1990s to reflect our religious pluralist sensibilities. They were changed from the 1700s modern English translation from the original Latin. O Come expresses a common human yearning for that Edenic utopia that Christians call the kingdom of God, and we Unitarian Universalists name as beloved community. It is always aspirational, not something we have yet attained, and hence remains a common yearning for all human communities, however they name it. It can also be called peace on earth, goodwill toward all living things, justice and dignity for all. Together, may we rise in spirit all and in body if you wish, expressing in song our common yearning and hope for an embodied beloved community with number 225 in the gray hymnal.
This is our story for all ages. And today I'm going to read the story of Daniel in the Lion's Den. And this is a version by Christopher Boyce. Well, there was once a man named Daniel who really was as gentle as a lamb. The king loved Daniel so much that he gave Daniel power over the entire kingdom. This made men jealous, to say the least. One day, the men happened to see Daniel praying to God, and they thought of a way to hurt Daniel. They went to the king. Why don't you make a law? You're a powerful king. Make a law that forbids people to pray to any god but you. The king was flattered and said, you're right. That sounds like a great idea. So a law was made that if anyone, anywhere, prayed to a god that was not the king, that person would be thrown to the lions. The jealous men, now that their plan had hatched, kept a close watch on Daniel until once again they found him praying to God. When they caught him, they took him before the king. The king hated to punish Daniel. He loved Daniel, but he felt he had to enforce the law he made before all men. That night, the men threw Daniel into the lion's den and closed the door. The men were just laughing as they walked away. They were finally rid of that Daniel. But the king, he was really sad. Daniel, he's the one that's as gentle as a lamb. There's no way he'll last 5 minutes with those lions. Slowly, though, the night passed. And in the morning, with trepidation, the king ordered the door to the lion's den to be opened. And there he saw Daniel lying down with the beast, completely unharmed. One of the lions was even licking his face. The king could not believe his eyes. Now there is a man who has religion, he said to the other men, who also could not believe their eyes. For religion, it gives you peace. And right before your eyes, you can see it. The lion and Daniel the lamb are lying down together, and neither is afraid.
Let us enter together into a time of deep reflection. Some people name as prayer. Let us breathe deeply so that we can commune with ourselves. O source of beginnings and endings, of life itself, we have arrived again at the time of jingle bells, when we too often feel jangled and jingled, pushed and pulled by the exhortations to be better, whatever really is better anyway, to do better, to be the best, the most, the leader, the head of the pack, to show our power over so many things, ourselves, possessions, other people. The invitations are continual to give more, to make the most difference, to purchase just the perfect gift, to be up to date on everything when the pace of change is too fast that even our already created machines cannot keep up. Oh, source of life, this merry-go-round of pressure that slowed down for these pandemic years. And though the slowdown brought us both relief and anxiety, it feels as if the relief portion may be slipping away as the messages to have, to be, and to do more increase again. Slow us down. Let us hear in this now, in the gathering of this community of faith, the call to breathe deeply, to rest away from the jingle and jangle, to stop the frantic beating of our anxious hearts, and connect us again with our deepest yearning for peace, the slower rhythm that comes with intentional breathing slowly in, and most importantly, with releasing the breath out slowly. Help us to be the peace we seek, not through running away from our anxieties, but coming face to face with them, speaking their many names, learning to recognize their shapes on the palettes of our individual lives and our collective congregational life. Bring us face to face with our fears that we may own them rather than have them own us. Call us to the actions that build deeper faith, hope, and love. Shalom, salam, peace be with us.
Deep peace of the shining star to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the running
The sharing of personal joys and concerns and sorrows. Our reading this morning comes from the Rabbi Rami Shapiro and is about peace. Peace is not the absence of conflict. Peace is dealing with conflict while honoring justice. Peace is not the absence of anger. Peace is expressing anger while honoring compassion. Thus ends the reading. The offering for the work of this church is always gratefully received. We hope it is also gratefully given. The half of the offering plate today will go for the month of December to the Worcester County Food Bank. The offering will now be received. I invite you in a moment to say thanks. Let us give thanks together for the offering that was just collected. Thanks. We are always awaiting the advent the arrival of beloved community. It is not here. It is always aspirational. I don't know that I believe it will ever actually be here, but that its purpose is for us to always aspire to doing better at human being, at human community, at being our deepest selves. Now, some of us are better at the task of waiting than others. Perhaps you, like me, tend to be impatient. But some people have spent a lifetime learning how to be more patient. I admire those folks, and I try from time to time to emulate them with varied amounts of success. Most of my life, though not a religious believer in the story of Jesus, of the Christ child, of immaculate conceptions and sudden miracles, and still, and it took a long time before I recognized this in myself, and perhaps you have seen it in yourself. Somewhere along the line, I recognized that I believed in that magical, superstitious manner that things like peace on earth and goodwill towards other and beloved community would just happen if we all believed it, or if we could all make ourselves somehow like Daniel in the lion's den. But really, that is magical thinking. There are occasionally in the world people who come along like Daniel, but it's rare. Waiting is not really quite the passive activity that I thought it was supposed to be, which is good news for people like me who aren't good at waiting. It needs to be an active doing. The word Advent means arrival, but to anticipate an arrival, which is much of the spiritual journey work provided during Advent for traditional Christians. To prepare for the arrival, how will we make ourselves ready? As it turns out, we don't need to be quite so ready for the Christmas dinner, though it's always delicious and enjoyable to be with family and friends. We don't need to be quite so ready to unwrap gifts and find a way to get rid of all that paper that's ecological. We don't really need to be ready to sing in perfect harmony, to make truly joyful noise. I'm sorry, Olga. That wasn't an admonition to the choir. Many of us Unitarian Universalists, when we send out holiday cards at this season, default to cards with the word peace, or peace on earth, or goodwill, or images of peace, peaceful doves. And so the concept of awaiting peace and the arrival of peace on earth, of lions and lambs lying down together, a mythical picture, is one that I think most of us can relate to, no matter what our personal, religious, and spiritual feelings and sympathies. Love is a risk. It's a huge risk. It's as big as Daniel going into the den with the lions and assuming he will come out the other end as they're having been their meal. Vengeance, as the king noted, is a really common human feeling when we encounter conflict and when we feel angry with one another. We need not pretend that we feel otherwise, and yet we do, don't we? We want to be nice. We want to be good. We pretend most of all to ourselves quite often. We don't want to see ourselves or have others see us like the jealous men who kept close watch on Daniel. And yet I invite you for a moment to think of a conflict you've had with another person when maybe you've kind of hoped. And certainly I can acknowledge my own humanity in this. When you've wanted to see something less than kind happen to them, even if it's just a passing thought, it is human. To love is a risk to let go of things like vengeance that comes from a fear that we will be hurt over and over again, or an anxiety about our own place or needs never being met. And then there's this other thing, the power of love, which we all believe in, right? We all believe it's a good thing. We say it's a good thing. We're standing on the side of love. We sing that regularly, although we no longer sing standing, to indicate our love and care for those who cannot. But power is attractive. The guys who saw Daniel praying, I mean, they knew power is a good thing. So they took their power as a group, to go to the king and convince him to do something. Their power as a group to convince themselves that they were doing something good for the king, something good for the kingdom. In the name of good, much evil has happened, right? Someone said that. Power is attractive, and it is also true that we need to experiment a bit with power to discover its fallibility and our attraction for it, because otherwise, how will we ever find our way into the power of love? And the power of love is not a miracle. It is not, say, peace on earth, goodwill to men, and everybody who believes it, it just happens. It just doesn't work that way, much to my frustration, and I'm sure to yours as well. It takes practice. And like anything that takes practice, learning instruments, learning a profession, learning how to cook, learning how to crochet, we do it step by step and we practice it over and over. So in this season of Advent, practice, I invite you to find one small skill, one small way to challenge within yourself that desire for power, that desire for vengeance, that fear that keeps you thinking you're different and separate. Find one small thing, and when it happens, when you notice it, which is the first part of learning the skill, growing in your ability to notice it in yourself. And it takes time. Maybe next year, you'll be a little more skilled at it. Just notice it. And then maybe ask yourself, who do you really want to be? Who do you say you are when you're here on Sunday morning? Who do you want the people around you in your faith community to know you as? What I've heard from every one of you is that Dick Boudelier was a person who asked himself that question in his life. So we train ourselves to engage in conflict by engaging in the little low stakes ones before we engage in the big ones. We train ourselves to recognize our anger and own it in ourselves before we risk owning it with someone else. We train ourselves, and I will just tell two short stories of the power of love. I'm wearing them around my shoulders today as I come before you and as we together engage in the act of worship. The power of the love of my family, blood and chosen, created for me by my daughter, who really, I don't think had ever sewn a stitch. And she asked everyone in the family to contribute a little something. And then she went to a colleague I didn't even know in Canada where she was living, who helped her sew it together. As I pulled this out to put it on this morning, I said a prayer for two of the people who made one of the squares, who are no longer living. But when I put this on, I know I am carrying the power of all this love. How do you carry the power of love when you need to bring yourself back to your center, to peace, to faith, to hope? What do you rely upon? What brings you into the deepest connection with the best part of your created being? Daniel has fallen on the floor, but he has not left us. And how will you begin to train yourself to be a little bit more of Daniel in this coming year? What one small skill will you work on developing? In a moment, I'm going to invite us to rise all in spirit, body, as we are able to sing together 3 of the 4 verses of number 354, We Laugh and We Cry. Why this hymn? Because it captures so much of our current Unitarian Universalist pluralistic sentiment about life's meaning, life's value as the greatest gift of all, the gift divine, and about our aspirations to live not for the love of power, but from the power of love. Please rise. Let's hear everyone sing. We're going to sing 1, 3, and 4. We love, we love. We dance, we sing our song. We need to feel their song. But most of all, we need our actions to support love with a capital L, and our resistance to the frivolous and self-serving calls for power. May the blessings and grace of peace on earth stir our hearts, move our arms, legs, and bodies in the coming days. Go in peace, return with peace in your heart. Amen. Live in love and in the strength of love and in the power and joy. For peace, may